So have you heard of logarithms before?
A little bit.
A little bit, okay. Maybe I'll stay with 2 to the x. So we have a very, very steep curve. So if we have y equals 2 to the x, we have our curve that we looked at before. But then what we can also do is we can look at the exponent, and we would say log base 2 of y equals x. So if I want to just look at the exponent, instead of saying I'll let y be 2 to the x, we say the logarithm base 2 of y is just that exponent is. And so now, instead of looking at a curve that goes up really steeply, now I'm going to graph this on the y-axis and this on the x-axis. But this now, which I'll call z equals x, is what? What kind of graph is z equals x?
It'd be a straight line going like that.
Yeah. So our logarithmic graph turns, instead of viewing this as a curve that gets very big, very, very fast, it turns it into a line. And so sometimes you see these graphs and they say, hey, here's a logarithmic graph of this, and you get a line. And you think, well, I see that graph, and it doesn't look like things are growing too quickly, but what is this when it's a line? What is it showing?
So here it's doubling every time it moves over 1 unit.
That's right. In this case, the line shows every time I move over 1 unit, I'm actually doubling. And the reason I didn't show that doubling is because why?
It just gets too big to fit on the graph.
It gets too big to fit on the graph, yeah.
Okay.
So, this is sometimes how these logarithmic graphs get shown. Other ways, they shrink the y-axis instead, and if you look carefully at some of the presentations on the virus, or the number of people who have it, and you look at the y-axis, they'll say, here's 1, here's 10, here's 100, here's 1,000. So the y-axis scale is all strange. Have you seen graphs like that before? And in a normal graph, this would be what we would be looking at if we, instead of 2 to the x, we were looking at 10 to the x. So on a graph with normal axes, we would see something going up super fast. But then when they shrink the axis like this, suddenly 10 to the x
Becomes that line again.
becomes our straight line. And the way viruses spread to people, sometimes these exponential curves are the way they spread. And we have to visualize these exponential curves, and it just becomes easier to do the presentation with these logarithmic curves. But if no one has explained them to you before,
Seem weird.
It might seem strange. But let's take a look now at 2 examples that I've seen in the last couple of days of these logarithmic presentations, and I just want to see what you think about them.
All right.
Okay?